Okay, this assignment was about hierarchy, which is an intentional means of imposing order in a meaningful way. Basically, with hierarchy, what designers are tasked with is to make sense of information and sort and order it to make it visually engaging as well as clear in terms of what's most important, what's secondary in importance, what's tertiary, what's quaternary, and so forth. So visually, hierarchy is conveyed through scale variations. It can be conveyed through value differences, light and dark. It can be conveyed through color. It can be conveyed through placement, position, and spacing, and other visual cues. Expressing order is one of the essential tasks or function of a graphic designer, and design itself is about bringing order and opposing chaos or disorder. So understanding hierarchy and creating hierarchical, shall we say, logic within a design is absolutely necessary for visual communication. So with this assignment, you were to take an existing menu and to redesign it with hierarchy so that the information makes sense, the layout's engaging, and the user can easily navigate it. Most of you did select a menu. A couple of you went with a recipe or a website. So we'll start with this one. So this is a recipe. And obviously, with any set of instructions, you need to convey or communicate what comes first, what comes next. And in a recipe, the most important thing is what are we making today? So here we have the mug cake recipe as it evidently appears online, given the 5 stars, and the underlined links. So it does have hierarchy, it's just not that interesting. So this definitely makes it more interesting. So here the top level hierarchy, larger, standing out and somewhat isolated. The first read as we come in to the page is the chocolate vegan mug cake. Then we have a tagline, which is very tertiary in hierarchy to this. And then we move into the ingredients, and the ingredients are in the same, looks like, weight and point size here. We've used a script, a casual script, for the various categories. And just scale-wise within the page, these could probably be a little larger because you've got room for them. So we've got bullet points, we've got the incidental information, and then we have the steps, and then nutrition information. So there is the title and the tagline are in their own zone, and then the ingredients and the information here are in another zone, and then the third zone is the instructions and the notes, and then the fourth zone is the nutritional information. The spacing for a list is working well, and looks like the spacing, the line spacing is what I'm talking about, the leading, works well here. Everything seems to be lined up, and we're putting emphasis on the amounts because we've got those in bold. Don't think we need the bullet points, and there's really no reason to have them. This is diminutive, it's small, it's got a lot of negative space around it. So we have a lot of focus on this because this is separated. Things that are close together we will understand as belonging together. That's the Gestalt design theory principle of proximity. This is isolated, surrounded by a lot of negative space. And so our eye is going to focus here more than it's going to focus here. So we're going to come in and we're going to land over here, and we're going to bypass this a little bit. We've got what appear to be good alignments here. Alignments here are looking good. Getting a little too close to the boundary over here. You've got a lot of room to drop the and to the next line, which means that the two would drop down to hang out with combine. And that'll work because if you have one word on its own line, that's not considered good typographic styling. So you want to leave room between the edge of a container box and the typography within the box. So this has a margin. This does not. The numerals here are bumped up right against the edge of the container box, and over here on this side the text is bumped up right against. This gets pretty close. This is bumping up right against. This is almost right against, but there's more room over here. So check the width of the column. It seems that there's more width to this, or this column is narrower than this column. So that would need to be fixed, because that's what I refer to as lazy design. It's not tragic design, it's lazy. So let's get that cleaned up and watch our margins. And here on the nutrition, we're still using, at least this is lined up, and then these are kind of running. The white does not stand out. The white and the light gray are not that much different in value, so the information here that people really need is very difficult to read. So I would probably go bold, black, rather than the white. So here we have a bistro, and this is fairly clear. It's fairly simple. And there's an indent, and that looks like it lines up pretty well. Alignments are okay. The vertical lines drop below the text boxes. So what are they aligning with? Alignments here are okay. This is isolated in its own header bar. The background images don't help. They make things very difficult to read. So it's, especially with the italic, we have a hard time reading this, and you don't want to do that to your users or your readers. No business wants to make it more difficult for their customers to read the menu or to take the action that they're supposed to take. So always keep that in mind. The value difference between the kind of, we're tending a little toward middle gray here. We're not as dark as this perhaps, but we're getting close. We're reducing the value contrast, and also there's a lot of light dark patterning underneath or behind the typography, making the typography very difficult to read. So avoid that. The photographs, if you're using them as a textural background, that's fine, but you've got to knock them back even more. The other thing too is that everything here is bleeding off the edge and everything over here is not. So why the decision to keep the clear margin here and then have the two photos over here bleed? Looks like your margins are okay. So overall, the hierarchy is working really well. This is our first read. We've got beverages, and then the darker, there's not that much difference in scale between the type, the header type and the body copy type, but the difference in weight makes the category stand out. And this is the original menu for the Sunday Bistro, and you can see that there are a lot of issues with it. Different types of decorative type which don't belong together, and different types of serif, and yeah, there's just way, it's like I have all these fonts on my computer, so I'm going to use them all, and I'm going to use as many different colors as I can, and then I'm going to have things start crowding. And yeah, so your redesign is much cleaner, makes a lot more sense. So here we have a 2-page. So here is the original menu, and it has a sense of being kind of crowded. It has a sense of maybe it was made in Microsoft Word. It has some issues. It has some readability issues and legibility issues. And so let's look at the revision. Okay, so the menu itself doesn't have the name of the establishment there. And given it a lot more white space, changed the entire format, the entire proportion, and taken it actually to 2 pages. So fitting all that information on 2 pages with white space makes it a lot easier to read. This is coming down center column, double column. This is centered below. So we have this top area, we have the bottom area kind of divided into a 2/5, 3/5 idea. The headers are centered, so definitely the headers are set apart. Things are fairly easy to read. There is hierarchy, more emphasis on the item names, and then a good difference in scale between the item names and then the descriptions. And then the prices look to be about the same scale, perhaps, as the names. And we're delivering. We've got food jets there, so things are lined up fairly comfortably. So the hierarchy here is working well. Got some good space in between. And so there is a setup to understand the different items are visually separated from each other and noticeable by the larger headline, the subhead, and then the body copy. And the background does not get in the way of legibility. It is subtle enough. This is a fairly simple menu. Going to bring it up a little bit. There we go. So this is a Scottish pub, I understand. So this is the original menu, and it was noted that it's hard to know what the establishment is. Not sure what this is. Evidently, they have a basic menu, and that probably changes seasonally. So this is the seasonal menu for winter. And these are your options, and everything's the same price. So it has kind of a different take. As pointed out in the journal, there really is no hierarchy except down here. So there is no division of, shall we say, appetizers or starters, and then the main course, and then the dessert. So let's see the results. Definitely we now know where we are, which can be helpful. Don't know that we need the heavy bar underneath. It doesn't really get in the way of anything, but it creates a lot of weight up here. So this is isolated by scale and shape. The typeface is definitely different, and isolation, this is on its own. So we have our starter, and we have our main course, and then we have our finisher. I would suggest keeping the same distance, like if you're starting the top of the one with the baseline, or pardon me, the cap height here. 2 is dropped below the cap height, and 3 is also dropped below the cap height. So if we look at what this is doing, see there's an alignment there. There's an implied line. And there's a certain distance there. And you probably want a certain distance there, or else it's going to start looking like an exclamation point, which we don't want. So that distance is good. Let's go down to the second section with the main courses. So we can see that here, just wanted to go to the 2 there, but you can see what's happening here is that the 2 is below the cap height of that first line. And then we have more distance here. So these distances should be consistent because there's no reason that they should not be consistent. Design has to be logical, and when you set up an established order, that order should stay in order to keep the communication level strong. So we set up an expectation here, it should carry through here and here. So again, that third line, that third section is also not on the, it's not aligned with the cap height. Also, watch your spelling. Generally, clients are responsible for their own information, but designers are also liable for mistakes that they don't catch. So always check, double check, triple check what you send out the door. We're missing an R here. Again, we want to set up an expectation. The understanding, though, here is clear. This is your first course. This is your second course. This is your third course. And then we have tea or coffee with mint. So the prices work. You could probably have maybe a little more scale difference between what's going on here and here. But overall, it's very clean. It uses white space very well to frame the active content. And we know we're at the Wheatsheaf Inn, which we didn't know with the original menu. So now we're looking at this one. So this is the menu for this restaurant, and we have a little bit of hierarchy. We're very quiet and introverted up here. It's a basic menu. It has a little bit of hierarchy. It looks like not a lot of design thinking went into this. It communicates okay, but it's not very appealing. So here we've got something much more dynamic because everything is on a diagonal. And this are on different diagonals. And this, nothing parallels really. So we've got diagonals going all over the place. So this alone makes it a lot more exciting. We have, we know where we are, and we know that this is the dinner menu. This could be quieter, it could be lighter in value because again, we're running into the inability to read the type on top of it. So it is actually impeding people from understanding what they're ordering. If they want the panzanella salad, they might miss the fact that there's cheddar in there. So always make sure that you have enough value separation, value contrast between the type and the background. The color bars with the knocked out type have a, looks like the type is the same as the body copy. So, and they're lined up very nicely, making a lot of sense. We have a little more space here, negative, than we do here, and then we do here. The hierarchy here with the larger scale and heavier weight works really well. Things stand out. This gets really hard to read because of the small, thin type within the darker color. So it is much more interesting. We've kept the kind of typewriter ink ribbon effect on the typewriter style type. Spacing looks good. There's a good consistency throughout. So some good design decisions, definitely an improvement. With something like this, don't ever take it so far as to lose the functionality for the sake of the aesthetics. So doing something like this, which has a very different voice, a very different personality, and the other menu where we started requires a lot of restraint and knowing when to stop before you take it too far. And the last one we'll look at is actually a website. So this is the homepage for Gretchen Gorham. And there's a lot of marketing issues on this webpage. I'm looking at this going, what does this person do? This should be front and center and not like what I offer. It should actually explain what she does. And it should be explained not that, you know, she does this sort of thing, but it should be explained from the user's point of view. So, and I'll talk about that in a minute when we look at the menu, but this is the website. And it does need help because there is no hierarchy. We don't know what she does. So here we find out that we're still talking about Gretchen Gorham, and she is a wellness coach focusing on functional nutrition and Ayurveda. And just as from a marketing standpoint, this has nothing to do with the hierarchy, but this is something to keep in mind when you're working with clients. If you want to take the creative lead and not just be an order taker as a designer, you need to be thinking about your clients' clients. So very often, somebody like this who's a consultant or a coach, they're going to make their website all about them. A better messaging, a better point of view to take is, instead of saying wellness coach focusing on functional nutrition and Ayurveda, reframe that into improve your health and vitality through functional nutrition and Ayurveda with wellness coach Gretchen Gorham. Something like that. Because then that becomes user-centric, that becomes human-focused. And it becomes, this is how the client serves their clients, because the client is trying to attract their clients to the website and to get bookings and things like that. So that's a sidebar tip. Messaging is hugely important, and focusing on the end user is hugely important. We have her basically kind of what she does, her goals, and what she does here. And she's got a couple of plans, and then the contact and the policy and so forth. So definitely hierarchy here. This is secondary, so this is a subhead. This is larger and darker. And then these are bold. Good idea to keep the bullet points on their own in their own column and not rag the type like this to that line, to that implied line, that alignment right there, because it becomes hard to read. This line is a continuation of this line, and so there should be a second line of alignment right there. And these are indented, and this is indented, and this are indented. And also don't leave a single word all on its own on a line. So rag things, break the lines above, and rag things around so that you have at least 2 words hanging on a line. Looking at space here versus space here, and it looks like there's a little more distance here. Why would that be? Again, logic. If this, then this. If this is doing this and this is not, why is this not doing what this is doing? So there's a lot of logic and pattern and methodology, expectation within design. Most websites are designed on a grid framework, and everything aligns to the grid. The top of the photo would be good if it actually aligned with the top of coaching. So the top of the photo, it'd be good if that actually came up there. And I think there's some alignment issues here. That looks like it aligns, but this is narrower. These should be indented. And too much leading. This actually should probably be larger type. It could have a little less leading, but the type here is a lot larger. And it would make sense if this is brought out to this alignment. Your hierarchy is working okay. There are some issues with precision in the layout. And remember, not everything you design needs precision, but websites usually, as I said, are grid-based, and there needs to be a logical order to where things are positioned, and the various sections and zones within the website need to be clearly understood. So that's it. If you have questions or other comments, leave them in the comments.